Have you ever imagined what it would be like if the king of all gods had to fight for his throne? Before Zeus ruled Mount Olympus, before thunder became a symbol of divine judgment, and long before gods were worshipped as eternal figures of authority, there was chaos. And from that chaos rose a terrifying prophecy and a father's fear that would shake the heavens. This is the story of how Zeus, the youngest of 6 children, was born into a world of terror and swallowed hope, and how he turned the wheel of destiny to defeat his own father, the mighty Cronus, in a war that reshaped the cosmos forever. If you're passionate about Greek mythology, subscribe to the channel and join us for more mythical journeys through gods, legends, and forgotten truths. The Age of the Titans. Long before the gods of Olympus reigned supreme, the universe was under the rule of a different order, the Titans. Towering beings of unimaginable power, they emerged from Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. Among them was Cronus, the youngest and most ambitious. Cronus had risen to power by overthrowing his own father, Uranus, in a brutal act that echoed through eternity. But as he took the throne, a prophecy soon followed, one that would haunt him for the rest of his reign. One of his own children would one day overthrow him. This was not a distant warning, it was destiny. Terrified of losing his power the same way he had gained it, through betrayal, Cronus made a horrific choice. Every time his wife, Rhea, gave birth to a child, he swallowed the newborn whole. No one questioned him. No one dared to stop him. The first sacrifices. Rhea, a goddess of motherhood and fertility, gave birth to 6 children. Each one was taken from her arms and consumed by Cronus. First Hestia, then Demeter, Hera, Hades, and finally Poseidon. Each time Rhea's heart broke a little more. Each time she pleaded, begged, and watched helplessly as Cronus obeyed the curse he feared. But she knew something had to change. And then came her 6th pregnancy. This time, something was different. The pain she felt wasn't just maternal, it was divine rebellion. Rhea couldn't stand by and watch another child vanish into the void of Cronus's stomach. She needed a plan. She needed allies. She needed to hide this last child, her last hope. A secret birth. As Rhea approached labor, she devised a bold deception. With the help of Gaia, the earth herself, Rhea escaped to the island of Crete, a place untouched by Cronus's surveillance. There, under the shade of sacred trees and the protection of divine spirits, she gave birth to her final child, Zeus. To ensure Cronus wouldn't suspect the deception, she wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to her husband as the newborn. As expected, Cronus swallowed it whole, never suspecting the truth. And so Zeus was hidden away, alive and untouched, while the rest of his siblings lay imprisoned in the belly of time itself. On the mountains of Crete, Rhea entrusted baby Zeus to a mystical group of caretakers, the nymphs of the forest, the goat Amalthea who fed him her milk, and the Curetes, warrior dancers who clashed their weapons and shouted to mask the cries of the child, so Cronus would never hear. This child was not just another god. He was a seed of revolution and vengeance. A god in hiding. As the years passed, Zeus grew in strength, spirit, and cunning. Raised among magical beings, he learned the secrets of nature, the force of the skies, and the wisdom of the ancients. He was not raised to inherit power. He was raised to reclaim it. Zeus knew from a young age that he was different, that he carried a destiny forged in silence and fear. Every tree that whispered, every storm that passed, it all told him the same thing. The time of the Titans was ending. His body matured with lightning in his veins, his mind sharpened like the blade of war. And then the moment came when he was ready to face the father who had swallowed time itself. He would not fight alone, but to raise an army of gods, he would first have to do the impossible: free his siblings from Cronus's stomach. The return of Zeus and the beginning of rebellion. The sky crackled the day Zeus left Crete. No longer a hidden child, no longer a whisper among nymphs, he had become a force, and with every step he took back towards his father's realm, the ground itself seemed to tremble. He wasn't returning as a son, he was returning as a challenger. But he couldn't face Cronus alone. To defeat the Titan King, he needed an army, and that meant rescuing his divine siblings still trapped inside their father's immortal body. Zeus knew that Cronus wouldn't willingly give up the children he had swallowed. The Titan was paranoid, cruel, and consumed by the fear of prophecy. There would be no diplomacy. So Zeus turned to the one thing Titans underestimated most: cleverness. The trick that broke the curse. Some say it was with the help of the Oceanid Metis, a goddess of wisdom and cunning. Others claim he did it alone, driven by instinct and rage. Either way, it would be his first act of war, not with weapons, but with deception. Disguising himself as a servant, Zeus infiltrated the court of Cronus. He was careful, calculating, a shadow in the halls of his father's kingdom. And then he struck. He offered Cronus a cup laced with a divine emetic, a potion so potent it forced even a titan to bend. The moment the mixture slid down Cronus's throat, the skies roared. The prophecy had begun to unfold. Cronus convulsed, gripped by forces he couldn't contain, and from his mouth came the children he had tried to erase from history, fully formed, divine, and furious. First, Hestia, radiant with flame and order. Then Demeter, goddess of growth and harvest. Hera, majestic and proud. Hades, lord of the underworld's shadows. And finally, Poseidon, whose presence carried the weight of oceans. Each sibling emerged disoriented, but alive. And in the face of their rescuer, they recognized their brother, Zeus, the child who had been spared, had returned to save them all. The reunion was brief. There were no celebrations, no time for healing. They all knew what had been unleashed. Cronus, humiliated and furious, would not forgive betrayal. He rallied the Titans. Loyalists who had ruled for eons stood at his side. Mighty beings who wielded the powers of earth, time, and force beyond mortal comprehension. Among them stood Atlas, Coeus, Iapetus, Hyperion, names that would echo in terror for centuries. But Zeus had awakened something greater than fear. He had awakened unity. For the first time, the younger gods stood as a single force. Though their powers were raw and untested, their cause was just. This was not a battle for vengeance. It was a battle for freedom, for the right to exist without being devoured by destiny. The war had begun. The search for allies. Even with his siblings by his side, Zeus knew they were still too few to face the full might of the Titans. Cronus commanded legions. Zeus needed allies from beyond the heavens. So, he journeyed deep beneath the earth, into the pit of Tartarus, where the monstrous sons of Gaia had been imprisoned by Uranus and Cronus generations before.
There, Zeus found them, the Hecatoncheires, beings with 100 arms and 50 heads, whose power could shatter mountains, and the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants of immense strength and divine craftsmanship. These creatures had been forgotten and chained, left to rot in darkness. But Zeus did not see monsters. He saw warriors. He freed them, broke their chains, and offered them something greater than vengeance: purpose. In return, the Cyclopes gifted Zeus with the ultimate weapon, the thunderbolt, forged in the heart of a dying star, a weapon that would become the symbol of his reign. To Hades, they gave the helmet of invisibility, a shadow-crafted helm that concealed, even from the gods. And to Poseidon, they gave the trident, a weapon that would one day stir oceans and shake the earth. The army of Olympus was now forged, not from tradition, but from rebellion. A storm was coming. Back on Olympus, the winds howled in anticipation. The skies grew darker with each passing day. Cronus could feel it. The fear he had tried to swallow now burned inside him, more alive than ever. Zeus stood at the gates of destiny, thunder in his grasp, lightning dancing around his form like a storm given shape. Beside him stood his brothers and sisters, reborn through liberation and fury. Behind them, monsters turned allies, gods of chaos, now gods of war. The first blow had been struck when Zeus made Cronus vomit up the past, but the real war, the war that would change the cosmos, was just beginning. The Titanomachy begins, gods versus titans. The sky fractured with the first clash. Thunder roared through the cosmos as Zeus hurled his first bolt of lightning against the stronghold of the Titans. The world shuddered, mountains cracked, rivers changed course, and the war to determine the fate of all creation, the Titanomachy, had begun. This wasn't a single battle. It was a cataclysm that stretched across a decade. 10 years of chaos, 10 years of destruction, 10 years where time itself seemed to pause, unsure which force would write the next chapter of existence. On one side stood the Titans, colossal, ancient, elemental. They were born from the original fabric of the universe, stronger, older, and more experienced than the gods. On the other side stood the Olympians, younger, faster, bolder. They were children of the future, wielding untapped power forged in secrecy and struggle. And in the center of it all stood Zeus, with fire in his eyes and lightning in his fists. The first strike, an ambush in the mountains. The war began with an ambush. Zeus led his siblings through the narrow mountain passes of Thessaly, aiming to strike Cronus' outposts before the full Titan army could organize. At first, the strategy worked. The Olympians overran several camps and captured key supply lines, but the Titans were quick to retaliate. Hyperion, Titan of light and cosmic fire, descended from the heavens with a fury that scorched the sky. With one sweep of his burning arm, he turned forests to ash and sent Poseidon flying into a chasm. Cronus, Titan of intelligence and foresight, anticipated the god's next move and launched a counterattack that surrounded the young Olympians in a deadly valley, a trap that almost ended the war before it truly began. Only Hades, using his helm of invisibility, was able to sneak behind enemy lines, disrupt the Titans' formation, and allow the gods to escape. The message was clear: this would not be a swift victory. Titans strike back. Cronus had ruled for millennia. His command of the battlefield was immense, and his generals, the other Titans, moved like natural disasters. Wherever they went, the world itself seemed to rebel. Okeanos turned rivers against the Olympians, flooding valleys and drowning battalions. Creos called upon the winds of the south to scatter Zeus's troops across the mountains. Iapetus, father of Prometheus, led a brutal land assault that crushed entire strongholds. The Olympians were young, but their spirits were unyielding. Still, doubt began to creep into their ranks. How could they possibly defeat forces this vast? Even Hera, proud and defiant, found herself questioning their purpose during the darkest nights of the war. But Zeus never faltered. His resolve burned brighter with every battle lost. Every scar was a lesson, every defeat a prophecy sharpening into focus. He was not merely fighting to dethrone Cronus, he was fighting to reshape the very order of the universe. And the tides were about to turn, forging new allies. As the war dragged on, Zeus knew that strength alone would not win this fight. He needed minds, he needed miracles, and so he sought out beings cast aside even by the Titans. One of them was Prometheus, son of the Titan Iapetus, but unlike his father and uncles, Prometheus believed in the potential of the younger gods. Secretly, he offered Zeus knowledge. He explained Titan weaknesses, battle strategies, and secrets only a Titan-born could know. Prometheus saw something in Zeus, not just might, but vision. With Prometheus's help, Zeus devised traps in the cliffs of Mount Olympus, the Titans' main fortress. He rerouted rivers with Poseidon's trident to flood enemy camps. He used Hades' helm to send invisible spies deep into Titan territory. And he began striking from the shadows, using agility, not just strength. For the first time, the Titans began to lose ground. Symbolic victory, the battle at the river Styx. One of the most pivotal moments of the early war came near the river Styx, a place where the veil between worlds thinned and oaths could not be broken. It was there that Zeus faced his grandfather, Uranus, the fallen sky god, a remnant of the ancient world revived by Cronus to terrify his children. But Zeus, embodying a new era, refused to bow. With his thunderbolt, he shattered the remnants of Uranus' spirit, severing the last connection between the old heavens and the earth. This wasn't just a physical battle, it was symbolic, a clean break from the ancient chaos. After that day, more divine beings began to join Zeus's cause. Oceanids, minor gods, dryads, and starborn warriors pledged loyalty to Olympus. The flame of rebellion had become a wildfire. The war became a revolution. What began as vengeance had transformed. No longer was it just about reclaiming a throne, it was about rewriting the rules of power. The Titans ruled through fear, through cycles of destruction. Zeus offered something different: choice, justice, and vision. The battlefield became a battleground of ideologies, old order versus new harmony. Cronus sensed the shift. The world no longer trembled at his name. Now it trembled at Zeus's thunder. But the war was far from over.
The Titans had lost battles, but not the war. And Cronus, wounded and enraged, began summoning powers forbidding even to the gods.
The turning point. Chaos, sacrifice, and the rise of a leader. 10 years of battle. 10 years of screams echoing through mountains, of fire raining from the sky, of gods and titans bleeding into the soil of creation. The earth bore scars, the oceans grew restless, even the stars blinked, unsure which force would decide their fate. And in the heart of it all stood Zeus, no longer the hidden child of prophecy, no longer just a bearer of lightning. Now he was the axis around which the rebellion spun. But even his strength was not infinite. The Olympians were growing weary, their enemies were relentless, and Cronus was becoming desperate. Cronus unleashes the abyss. Cornered by the unexpected resilience of the gods, Cronus reached into the deepest vaults of his power and opened a door that had long been sealed. He called upon the primordial forces that predated even the Titans. From the edge of the void came Eris, spirit of discord, whispering chaos into the hearts of Zeus's forces. From the darkest corners of the earth emerged Typhon's shadow, the sleeping storm of monstrous energy, not yet awakened but stirring, a foreshadowing of a war still to come. Cronus even attempted to awaken Nyx, goddess of night, whose gaze could wither any mortal soul. But the cosmos resisted, the universe itself trembled, not wanting to be pulled back into the chaos before time. And in that moment, Zeus made his decision. He would no longer play by the rules of war. He would end this. Hera's Gambit. Strategy over strength. While Zeus stood as the symbol of Olympus's fury, Hera began using her mind as her weapon. She lured the Titan Mnemosyne, keeper of memory, into a confrontation, not with blades, but with words. Hera reminded her of the pain Cronus had caused, of the children he had swallowed, of the dreams he had crushed beneath the weight of fear. And Mnemosyne hesitated. She did not join the Olympians, but she stepped aside, allowing their forces to pass unchallenged through a critical canyon that had been guarded by memory itself. This was a small but vital shift. The Titans were no longer united. Cracks had formed. Poseidon's wave, the earthquake at Aegae. Meanwhile, Poseidon, ever silent, ever brooding, had grown tired of second place. He traveled to Aegae, deep beneath the sea, where the foundations of the earth rested. There, with the Cyclopes beside him, he struck the ocean floor with his trident, and the world responded. A tsunami surged through the Titan strongholds, mountains crumbled, fortresses were drowned. And when the waters receded, Poseidon stood taller, not just as a warrior, but as the god of oceans. The Olympians had begun reclaiming the domains they were born to rule. The clash of brothers, Zeus versus Atlas. The true turning point, however, came when Zeus faced Atlas, the Titan general who held up the very sky. Atlas was brutal, calculated, and unwavering in his loyalty to Cronus. Their battle shook the heavens. Lightning clashed against raw might. Atlas hurled mountains. Zeus turned them to dust with bolts of pure celestial fire. For hours they fought, god and Titan, storm and stone. Finally, with a roar that split the air like an earthquake, Zeus struck Atlas with a thunderbolt forged from the core of Olympus itself. The impact was so powerful that the earth shifted, and Atlas fell. Zeus did not kill him. Instead, he punished him. Atlas was condemned to hold up the sky for all eternity, a living symbol of Titan defeat and divine justice. It was the first major Titan to fall, and it changed everything. Hades' underworld tactic. While the surface boiled with war, Hades moved in the shadows. He had claimed dominion over the underworld, not by right, but by necessity, and now he used it. Wearing the helm of invisibility, Hades slipped behind Titan lines and sabotaged their weapons, whispered fear into their dreams, and corrupted their communication. The Titans began to feel hunted, not by swords, but by silence. And then came his greatest stroke. He unleashed phantoms from the realm of the dead, illusions that haunted the dreams of Cronus himself. The Titan King began to unravel, doubting his own mind, lashing out at his allies, questioning loyalty where there had been none lost. The war was no longer just physical. It had become psychological, and Cronus was losing his grip.
Zeus steps into destiny. With Atlas fallen, Hades haunting the rear lines, and Poseidon flooding the coast, the Olympians began to believe, not just in the war, but in Zeus. He wasn't simply their brother. He wasn't just powerful. He had vision, clarity, the ability to unite power and purpose. In council, he listened. In battle, he led from the front. In despair, he sparked hope. And that hope was about to be tested one final time, because Cronus, stripped of pride and pushed into a corner, was preparing a final strike. One so devastating, so unnatural, it threatened to tear the very fabric of reality. The final battle, Zeus versus Cronus. The air grew still, the winds paused. Even time, ruled by Cronus himself, hesitated. After 10 years of cosmic war, of thunder and shadow, the battlefield stood silent, as if the universe were holding its breath for what was to come. The Olympians had gained ground, shaken the pillars of Titan rule, and brought their enemies to the brink, but Cronus had not yet fallen. No matter how much power Zeus had amassed, he still had to face the one being who had once consumed gods. The final battle was not going to be fought across a mountain range or a valley. It would be fought at the very center of existence, Mount Olympus, the seat of Titan rule, the throne of Cronus, the place where time was born. Mount Olympus was not like any ordinary mountain. It rose beyond the sky, a jagged tower of obsidian and fire, pulsing with the raw energy of ancient creation. Here, Cronus ruled, surrounded by echoes of the past, walls that whispered of rebellion, betrayal, and fate. It was here that Uranus had once fallen, and it was here that Cronus would now face the same terror he had inflicted on others. Zeus ascended the mountain alone, not because he didn't have allies, but because some wars can only be settled between father and son. At the summit, Cronus waited. No longer proud and invincible, but still terrible. His body glowed with the energy of time itself. His eyes were suns. His voice was thunder.
You dare challenge me, boy? I don't challenge you, Zeus said as the sky cracked open. I replace you.
The clash of generations. The first strike came from Cronus. He summoned his sickle, the very same weapon he had once used to castrate Uranus and seize power. With it, he sliced the air, tearing open rifts in time that threatened to pull Zeus into oblivion. But Zeus answered with a lightning bolt so bright it lit the stars. The sky became a battlefield of elements. Lightning met time, storm met silence, creation met destruction. Cronus bent the very timeline around him, trying to age Zeus into dust. But Zeus, born of rebellion and prophecy, resisted. He shattered time loops with thunder, split timelines with fury, and stood in defiance of destiny itself. For the first time in eons, Cronus stumbled. The storm within. This was no ordinary duel. Around them, the cosmos wept, mountains collapsed, oceans boiled, the constellations shifted in fear. Gods watched from below, powerless as the father of time battled the god of thunder. Cronus attempted one final trick, to consume Zeus as he had done to his siblings. He opened his jaw wide, pulling the air toward him with the force of a black hole. But Zeus had not come unarmed. He reached deep within himself, summoned everything he had gained, the thunderbolts of the Cyclopes, the strength of his siblings, the rage of 10 years in exile, and hurled a final bolt with such force that it pierced through Cronus's chest, pinning him to the stone of Mount Olympus. There was silence. Then, a crack. The sickle of Cronus fell from his hand, clattering down the mountainside. The skies cleared, the tension in the universe loosened, and Cronus fell. The fate of the Titans. With Cronus defeated, the remaining Titans attempted to flee, but there would be no mercy, not for those who had ruled through fear for so long. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, now united in purpose, stood as judges over their fallen ancestors. The punishment was swift and eternal. Cronus was chained and cast into Tartarus, the abyss beneath the underworld where time could no longer touch the living world. Atlas, who had already fallen in battle, was sentenced to hold the heavens on his shoulders, a burden that would never lift. Other Titans were imprisoned as well, locked away behind adamantine gates guarded by the Hecatoncheires, the very monsters they had once betrayed. But not all Titans were punished. Some, like Prometheus and Themis, had aided the Olympians and were spared, a sign that the new age would be ruled not only by power, but by justice. The birth of Olympus. With Mount Olympus burning behind them, the Olympians turned their gaze toward the skies. There, high above the clouds, a new mountain would rise, Mount Olympus, destined to be the throne of gods, a place untouched by time or tyranny. Zeus, no longer a fugitive or rebel, stood before his brothers and sisters. He had fulfilled the prophecy. He had broken the cycle. He had not only survived the wrath of Cronus, he had ended an era. But what came next would be harder still, because winning a throne is not the same as ruling it.
The rise of Zeus and the division of the cosmos. Victory came at a cost. The battlefield was silent now. No more thunder, no more blood, no more screaming titans clawing at the heavens. But the earth still trembled beneath the weight of what had been done. The war was over, yet nothing was truly settled. The Olympians stood above the ashes of the old world. Gods born in fear, raised in secrecy, forged in battle. Now they had to build something new. The question burned in every immortal mind. Who would rule? The answer had already revealed itself, not in words, but in action. The leader they followed. Zeus had not claimed the throne by force alone. He had united monsters and gods. He had stood against the impossible. He had dared to challenge fate and reshape it with his own hands. He had become more than a warrior. He had become a symbol, not of tyranny, but of balance. Even the proudest among his siblings, Hera, Poseidon, and Hades, did not question what the cosmos already knew. Zeus was born to lead. Still, the universe was vast, and not single god, not even one as mighty as Zeus, could rule it all. So the brothers gathered, not in battle this time, but in peace. And they made a pact, one that would shape the structure of the divine realm for all eternity. The Great Division: sky, sea, and underworld. In a sacred council, the three sons of Cronus, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, drew lots to divide the cosmos into three kingdoms, not by favoritism, not by conquest, but by divine chance. Zeus drew the sky, the heavens, storms, clouds, and light. From this moment forward, he would reign from Mount Olympus, his throne nestled among thunderclouds, where his voice would command the weather and his justice would echo across the world. Poseidon drew the sea, vast and untamable, filled with mystery and monsters. He became lord of oceans, tides, storms at sea, and all that lived beneath the waves. His trident stirred tsunamis and calmed whirlpools alike. Hades, the last to draw, received the underworld, the realm of the dead, hidden beneath the surface of the earth. It was a somber domain, filled with shadows, spirits, and forgotten memories. But it was powerful, eternal, and Hades accepted it with dignity. Though their realms were divided, their blood and purpose remained bound. Together, they formed the core of the new order, the Divine Triad. The establishment of Mount Olympus. With Zeus at the helm, the gods began to construct Mount Olympus, not just as a throne, but as a city of immortals. Temples rose among the clouds, pillars of marble gleamed under celestial light. The air itself carried a fragrance unknown to mortals, a blend of ambrosia, storm, and eternal dawn. Olympus was more than a home. It was a symbol of divine order. The 12 Olympians would soon gather here, forming a new pantheon. But in this early age, it was Zeus who set the tone, fair but firm, mighty yet measured. He passed judgment on the defeated, offered mercy to those who had shown it, and ensured that every being, god or beast, knew where they stood. He wasn't perfect. He would falter, love too fiercely, rage too deeply. But in his rule, the world found structure, something the Titans had never given it. The world takes shape. With the divine realms divided, balance returned to the cosmos. Zeus ordered the fates, ancient weavers of destiny, to resume their spinning, threading new lives into the tapestry of existence. Demeter brought fertility back to the earth, covering scorched lands with golden fields. Artemis and Apollo would soon be born, bringing moonlight and music to a recovering world.
The rivers flowed again, the stars realigned, mortals, newly awakened, looked to the sky and for the first time saw gods who listened. But not everything was healed. Deep below, in the pit of Tartarus, the Titans stirred. Cronus lay silent, but not broken. The memory of the war lived on in every thunderclap, every storm, and in the warning carved into the very bones of the earth. Even kings must one day be challenged.
Justice beyond power. One of the first acts of Zeus's reign was the creation of divine laws, not just for gods, but for the mortal world as well. He summoned Themis, Titaness of divine order, to serve as his counselor. Together, they established the sacred oaths, the balance between punishment and mercy, and the divine code that even the gods could not break without consequence. No longer would might alone determine right. Zeus declared that any being, god, spirit, or mortal, could be punished for hubris, for dishonor, for defying balance. This was the legacy he wanted to leave, not just the rule of gods, but the rule of justice. And so, thunder became more than a weapon. It became a warning. The legacy of Zeus, Lord of Olympus, keeper of order. Zeus did not simply win a war. He redefined the nature of divine power. Before him, the universe was ruled by chaos, instinct, and fear. The Titans had imposed a brutal order, one rooted in cycles of violence and paranoia. Cronus devoured his children, Uranus feared his sons, power passed through blood, and fate was a curse rather than a calling. But Zeus broke that chain. He didn't just survive the destiny written for him, he rewrote it. He did what no one before him had dared. He ruled with vision. And for the first time, Olympus had a king who didn't only guard the throne, he guarded the balance of the cosmos. The golden age of the Olympians. After the fall of the Titans, the world entered a new era, an age of flourishing divine presence. With Zeus at his center, Olympus became the heart of immortal power and divine order. 12 thrones were carved in celestial stone, one for each major deity. Hera, his queen and sister, sat beside him, ruling over marriage and the sanctity of unions. Poseidon continued to govern the sea, and Hades remained a silent sentinel of the dead. Each god had a domain, a purpose, and a will. And above them all, Zeus watched, not as a tyrant, but as a father of gods and men. He welcomed new children, Athena from his own mind, Dionysus from fire and madness, Hermes with wings on his feet. Some were born from love, others from war, but all were bound to his divine legacy. Olympus became a reflection of the human soul, filled with passion, conflict, beauty, and contradiction. The gods mirrored us because Zeus had allowed space for them to be more than weapons. They were personalities, forces of nature, and symbols of the human journey. But Zeus's most enduring legacy wasn't just his thunderbolt. It was the idea he represented. He became the guardian of Xenia, the sacred law of hospitality, the punisher of hubris, the arrogance of mortals and gods who defy natural order, the enforcer of oaths, the protector of justice, and the giver of prophecy through oracles and dreams. Every time the sky cracked with lightning, mortals looked up and whispered his name, not just out of fear alone, but out of reverence. He was power, yes, but also wisdom, and above all, balance. The echo of the storm. Over time, mortal empires would rise and fall. Philosophers would ponder the nature of gods. Empires would trade Zeus for new names, new heavens, and new scriptures. But the image of the thunder-wielding king, the one who challenged his father, freed his siblings, and ruled the world from the mountaintop, that would never fade. In every tale of rebellion against tyranny, in every myth of sons confronting the sins of their fathers, Zeus is present. He became more than myth. He became archetype. The king, the judge, the challenger, the protector.
His presence echoes in modern heroes, from comic books to fantasy epics. His story is retold in classrooms, theaters, and quiet whispers beneath thunderclouds. Zeus is not gone. He is within every story where justice overcomes fear. The crown that was earned. He wasn't the first god. He wasn't born perfect, and he certainly wasn't always right. But Zeus earned his throne, not through birthright, but through courage, cleverness, and a willingness to change the world he was born into. He stood against time itself and won. He stood for his brothers, his sisters, and all beings who deserved freedom. And when the cosmos was cracked open, he rebuilt it with his own hands. That's what made him king. Not the thunderbolt, not the mountain, not even the fear he inspired, but the order he created and the hope he left behind. The king who dared to rise. So the next time a storm rolls in, the next time lightning flashes across the sky, close your eyes and remember the boy who was swallowed by fate, hidden by love, raised by myth, and returned with thunder in his hands. Zeus, king of Olympus, breaker of chains, builder of balance. If this story of rebellion, power, and divine destiny stirred something in you, don't forget to subscribe for more epic tales from the world of Greek mythology. Because in the myths of gods, we find reflections of our own storm. And in the rise of Zeus, we remember, even destiny can be defied.